know, but there is some well, it's more right.
Great. All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us. My name is Benjamin Johnson. I'm the assistant manager for McNally Robinson Bookseller. Not the assistant manager. I am the. Sorry, I've been sick the last 2 days, and our actual assistant manager was doing the intros, and I didn't change that back. I'm the events coordinator for McNally Robinson Booksellers here in Saskatoon. Wishful thinking. This event is being held on Treaty 6 territory, which is the land of the Cree, Saulteaux, Dene, Dakota, Lakota, and Nakota, and the homeland of the Métis Nation. As we listen to our speakers share their words today, may we recognize the Indigenous stories that have been shared on this land since time immemorial. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the Saskatoon launch of Wild People Quiet by Tara Gereaux, published by Scribner Canada. Joining us as guest host this evening is author Lisa Bird-Wilson. Thank you so much to Tara and Lisa for being here this evening and for working with us to make this event happen. Just to note that this event is being live streamed, so please be aware of the webcam off to our right there. I'd also like to take this time to encourage you to silence your phones for the duration of the event. If you would like to buy copies of Wild People Quiet or Saltus or probably Ruby by Lisa Bird-Wilson, we have copies behind me on the signing table as well as on the desk by where you first walked in. You're welcome to get your book signed before you purchase it, but please remember to actually purchase it before you leave the store. So, Tara Gereaux is the author of Saltus, which was shortlisted for the 2022 ReLit Novel Award and 3 Saskatchewan Book Awards, and Size of a Fist, a teen novella which was also shortlisted for 2 Saskatchewan Book Awards. Tara holds an MFA in creative writing from UBC and has worked as a writer and story editor for film and television. She is a citizen of the Métis Nation-Saskatchewan and lives in Regina on Treaty 4 territory and the homeland of the Métis. Lisa Bird-Wilson is a Saskatchewan Métis and Nehiyaw writer whose work appears in literary magazines and anthologies across Canada. She is the author of the novel Probably Ruby and the poetry collection The Red Files. She is a founding member and chair of the Saskatchewan Aboriginal Writers Circle Incorporated. And now I'd like to invite Tara to give a short reading from her book. Everyone, please give her a warm welcome.
Thank you all so much for coming out. Can you hear me? Does that work? Okay. I'm just going to do a short reading just right from the very beginning so I don't have to set anything. August 1946, Torteval, Saskatchewan. The air sizzles in from the hopper window. The heat's been excruciating this past week. Florence nudges the bathroom door closed so the air doesn't warm the house and reaches for the peroxide under the bathroom counter. She pours some into the spray bottle and dilutes it with water from the tap, measuring by eye only. A faded towel wrapped around her shoulders, she works at her hair in sections, using a brush to guide the mixture as close to her scalp as possible, covering the brown roots that are just beginning to show. A Saturday night ritual every other week for nearly 30 years. No one has ever asked her about her hair. Most don't even know, though there have been a few women in town in recent years who've commented, either praising her particular shade or deriding her not quite out of earshot for trying to emulate those Hollywood starlets. She's flattered they would think that of her, that she would be the type of person to aspire to looking like a star. Florence sits on the toilet lid and waits for the peroxide to tingle, never using a timer now, knowing by instinct the moment when the roots will be lightened to the perfect hue, but before the skin on her scalp blisters. She plans her day tomorrow. Church at 10, return home to prepare the pork roast, gravy, and potatoes. She'll also make a pot of tomato and macaroni soup to eat with some cold roast pork buns for the workday evenings when she'd rather read or listen to the radio than prepare a meal. A wave of heat rolls in and she looks up the slit of sky. A branch from the Manitoba maple in her front yard stretches into view. It's not quite September, but its leaves are already turning at the edges, bright and golden yellow. The color is startling, searing. She holds her breath. Colors used to consume her. She spent so many of her waking hours, and sometimes her dreaming ones too, thinking about colors and how to work them into her floral designs, how to craft a story with her beadwork. She was careful when selecting a particular hue, deliberate in her choices, because colors held meaning and feeling that was different for everyone. A shade could ignite joy in one person, pain or regret in another, and colors could spark memories, sometimes ones you'd tried to forget. Florence pushes back her thoughts as she forces the window shut. It's all just history, all in the past now. She waves the towel shawl around herself to create a breeze. She is Florence Banks, a secretary at Pratt's Insurance and Real Estate in the town of Torteval, and a respected member of the community for the past 11 years. She blends in with everyone else. The tingle on her head turns to a sting, almost a burn, while her dark hair fades to a perfect shade of blonde. And yeah.
Thank you. Tansei, good evening. Thank you for that reading, Tara. Okay, well, boy, am I ever excited to be here with you. And can everyone hear me okay? Is this all right? Okay, yeah, I'm really thrilled to be here and help Tara launch her new book. I know I was lucky enough to read it when it was a PDF on the computer and went through it and was able to write a blurb for the back. And thank you for including me in that because I'm very honored to be a part of this book. I do want to make a couple of comments first. I hope you're okay with that. I know people didn't come here to hear me talk, but I'm going to. Okay, so first, I do want to say, bravo to you for this new book. It feels pretty epic to me. It's so full of our history and the stories of Métis in this province, and especially in southern Saskatchewan. And yet, it's not didactic. It doesn't read like history or a history book. And for a fiction writer, that's always the fear, right? Is that you're going to somehow sound like you're trying to educate somebody about something, which is absolutely what you don't want to sound like you're doing. And yet that's what your book ends up doing, which is great. Yes, and you're writing about that history, and you're also writing about like small p political ideas and cultural ideas. And that's tricky too. So I think you've done really a great job. So I just want to really congratulate you on that. And, I was pretty much in awe from the beginning to the end of your book. And you pulled this thing off in a way that I've often sort of dreamed about being able to do, but never been able to pull off or see it through. And that's to look at, like I said, at that history and those politics that have gone on for the Métis in this province, and to go all the way back, to the 40s were a pretty critical time. And then you go back also to Florence's childhood. So I think this is a really important addition to the literary canon and to Métis literature. And so I just want to say merci for writing this beautiful book. So those are my intro comments. And then I have a first question that also includes a bunch of comments. To the question. Okay.
I love it when the host.
Sorry.
No.
Way out there. Okay. So it occurred to me as I was reading your work, don't we as Métis have the bones of what we need to write the stories, like Métis stories? They're here in our histories, and they're in our families, and they're in our grandparents, and then they're in our great grandparents. And probably because I'm not a very linear thinker when it comes to thinking about time in that way, about our time as Métis people. I also believe those history and stories are in our children too. So, you know, aren't they there? Aren't they a part of all of us as Métis people? And so that thought leads to my first question. And I'm wondering if you can just tell us about your motivation to write this book, your own family stories and history, and how this history resonates through Florence's story that you wrote.
Sure. Yeah. So I grew up in small town Saskatchewan, and we were always told that we were Métis because my grandfather was, but we were also told not to really talk about it, or we weren't encouraged to talk about it. We weren't connected to the community in any way. And then when I grew up and became an adult myself, I started to look and explore that background with my mom and my brother, and started to learn about our connections and where we came from. And I was always kind of curious and fascinated about why we were never allowed to talk about it. And so I started to, that kind of really became the inspiration or the idea, the seed for the novel. Because I don't know, why my grandfather didn't want to talk about it, but so I set the novel in the 1940s, which is when my grandfather was a young man. And he, again, I don't know the story of why and when he kind of became quiet about his own Métis identity, but I figured that when you're a young adult, that's when you're making big life decisions for yourself. So I wanted to explore kind of what was happening at that time in the 1940s, and look at some of the factors that might have contributed to such a decision. So that's how the novel came to be.
Thank you for that. Okay, so my second question is much briefer and more simple. I noticed that your book has been out since March 3rd, so that's like 10 days. And I just want to ask you, how's it going? Like, tell us what you've been doing.
Oh my God. So we were just talking about this before. So my last book came out in 2021 in the midst of the pandemic. Everything was locked down. I didn't do a single reading. I didn't do anything for the release of that book. And then this book is with a larger publisher, and it is completely the opposite. I went out to Toronto on Saturday and I did a couple events out there, did a lot of media. My partner's in the background and he came with me, thank God. Made sure I needed to be where I had to be. Yeah, events in Toronto, more media than in Winnipeg, which is incredible. And Janet and Nancy came out to Toronto, and there were a lot of people in the audience that I knew that I didn't expect to see there. So that was lovely. And now we're here, and it feels good to be back on the prairie. And yeah, I'll have a hometown launch in Regina at the week after next. But yeah, it's been madness, but in a really good way.
That's really awesome. It sounds like you've got a really good publicist, which is really, really great. That's kind of exactly what you need in setting up all of those media interviews. And didn't 2021 just suck? Like, oh my God, my book came out then too, and it's just terrible. Okay, so here's another bit of a longer question. So these stories are grounded in beadwork, and the history is grounded in beadwork, which is it's in its own way has survived to tell the stories of our grandmothers. And so I'm thinking here about the rematriation efforts of our grandmother's beadwork by organizations and individuals like Gabriel Dumont Institute and Gregory Schofield both come to mind when I think about those rematriation types of projects and looking at the beadwork of our grandmothers. And so you do an amazing job of demonstrating beadwork as storytelling. And here, examples that come to mind would be not only the items that Florence beads in her contemporary life. So she beads a number of items that sort of tell her story that are, as Lillian, her aunt, says, not traditional. But they also, I think that's reflected in the moccasins that come back to her and the story that they hold for her. And I wonder if you can talk a little bit about the central theme of Métis beadwork and the act of beading in your book and in Florence's story, and maybe also talk about your own connection to beadwork as well.
I think I wrote about a beadworker because I really suck at beadwork myself. I love beading. I love looking at it. I love learning about it, but I'm not very good at it. So yeah, that's why I wrote about a beadworker. But I also wrote about beadwork because when I first began learning about the history, you learn about like the big P politics, and that's generally about the men. You learn about Louis Riel and Cuthbert Grant, but you don't hear a lot about the women. And Gregory Schofield talks about that as well. And the women are hugely important to the passing down of the culture, and beadwork was a huge part of that. And it was used, yeah, to pass down the stories and the teachings and cultural knowledge. And so I really wanted to focus on a woman who was a beadworker. And that was the choices behind that. And I'm trying to think about the other pieces of your question.
I guess maybe, okay, so I mean, other things were just about your own connection to beadwork, but also, like I really, okay, so I see the beadwork theme just really sort of holding all the parts of this book together. So I don't know. Anyways, those are kind of my observations. Just say anything you want to say about it.
Okay. Yeah, well, I actually didn't know when I first started writing this how much the beadwork was going to be a part of Florence's story and her journey. And yeah, and it all kind of came to the surface. And then I actually structured the book the way that you would bead. And once I realized that was going to be the structure, then everything kind of, I don't want to say fell into place, because nothing in writing ever falls into place, but it made more sense to me, and I felt like I understood kind of where things would go from there. But I guess I was also wanting to explore how art and beading in particular plays a role in identity, in how we define ourselves, how we create stories for ourselves, and share stories. And that's exactly what, Florence does when she starts to reconnect and question some of the decisions that she made earlier in her life. It's through the act of beading and through kind of reflecting on those decisions, that she kind of beats herself back home, I guess.
That's a lovely way to put it. Can you talk a little bit more about so you're talking about the structure being based on beadwork, and then I mean, one of my observations was sort of the 4 sections and the names of them. Can you just talk a little bit about that? And how many people have read the book? Because I feel like, okay, some, but these are nice clues when people go to read the book, and they'll, anyways, if you want to talk about that would be great. And your choices for organizing it like that, like I think you had to come to that probably at some point rather than kind of start with it.
Yeah. So I like I said, I am not a beadworker, but I did do research when I had several beading lessons. It still never got any better, no matter how many lessons I had. But Métis beadwork is based on the full life cycle of a plant or flower. So it includes like the 4 elements: the vines, the leaves, the buds, and then the flower itself, or the fruit. And so there's the 4 parts, and you bead them in a specific order. And so the novel is structured into those 4 parts and in the way that you would bead them. So
That's lovely. And I really like the way that your answers are just leading into my next questions. It's working out well for me anyway. Okay, so this book at its core is really a historical novel. Even though I would call it literary fiction as well. But I wonder what kind of research you did to be able to write this book with such veracity, or it just rings so true. So just if you want to take us through your research journey, you talked a little bit about the beating, but I'm guessing there was more. So yeah.
I think Wilfred should stand up right now. I did a ton of research, and I'm a very slow writer too. So I researched the whole time that I was writing, and I mean, David should also stand up because I used a lot of publications from the Gabriel Dumont Institute, the best resource for Métis history and culture. And so, yeah, I read a ton, but then I also worked with Wilfred, who was my advisor, who has a lot of Métis knowledge and history, and he would sometimes guide me to where I could find information. The research was the most fun and exciting part of writing the book, but it was also, I could easily procrastinate writing if I just focused on research. So the best kind of advice that I had about writing historical novels is write the story and do the research alongside of it so that you know what research you need to do for the story itself, and not try to do a bunch of research and then pack that research into the novel. So I was always really focused on the characters and their work, and then knowing what they were going through would tell me what research I would need to do. So that way, once I figured that out, then I got out of the research as procrastination, and I could write and then research. So, but it was, I wish I logged the hours, because yeah, it was a lot.
Wow, that's really that's really interesting, and I really think that's good advice, whoever gave it to you. I think that research can probably just take you down every possible, rabbit hole ever. And you're right, you might never get to your book because you're just, researching away. So yeah, no, that's great. And it worked. It turned out really well. So okay, so I'm gonna preface this question by saying a quote. So last week I hosted a launch here for Louise Half's new book with Damawick, Tell Them, and it's a book of poetry and nonfiction. So I feel like it's safe for me to say that because you guys aren't competing for anything. So Louise, in that book, she says, energy is stored within our languages. And I sort of abbreviate that a little bit, but energy is stored within our languages. So in your novel, the Michif language forms another anchor for the book and for Florence's memories and her background. And culturally, for the Métis, there's been this beautiful resurgence of Michif language learning in the last number of years. Can you tell me about your own connections and reconnections to language, and why it was important to include Michif in your book, and specifically Southern Michif?
Well, I chose Southern Michif because that would have been the language that my family would have spoken because of where we're from the south of the province. And I chose to include it because it would have been natural to the characters and the time and place for my characters to be speaking. My connection with Michif, again, thanks to Gabriel Dumont Institute, I was able to take some lessons, and so started learning that. I don't think I will ever be fluent. I think I'm too old for that, but I am able to recognize some words. And so the main reason why I wanted to include it was because I wanted to be true to the characters, but I also, when I'm reading books by like Catherine Everett, Connor Kerr and Michelle Porter, and when they include Michif language, and I read it and I understand it, there's just this feeling that you get. I think the other night that I had said, it's like something lights up inside of you, and I wanted to contribute that to that as well, and bring the language back to not back to life, but maybe that's it. I don't know. I wanted to give that experience to readers. So
I also think I really appreciate the way that you, and I've seen other writers do this too, you're not translating for the reader. You're not like including, you're letting the reader work with the context of what's happening. And I quite like that. Do you want to say anything about your choice to do that?
yeah, I always knew from the beginning that I wasn't going to do that. And I think it was just, again, because I was coming at it from the place of the characters, and it just would have been natural for them to speak. And even if Florence didn't understand it, they still would have used it and figured out that she would pick it up at some point. Or yeah, I think it was just my primary concern was with the characters, and it's okay that the reader might not get it because there's subtext there. And the language is there, and that's enough. Yeah.
Plus you can get the an app with a Michif app from GDI. We'll plug to David, a little plug. Pretty sure David made that app or something. I don't know. Yeah, so if you don't know the Michif words, you can look them up. You can download the app. Okay, so now I have kind of a writerly interest question, like, as a writer. So your development of character and your use of dialogue, which does a lot of work to develop your characters, it's really very natural. And I kind of find like the character development and that dialogue, the dialogue was what swept me into the book and kept me going. And there was nothing about it that was artificial, or, you know what I mean? And I really think that's kind of a seasoned writer thing, to be able to create that kind of dialogue. It really is an accomplishment. So can you just tell me your secrets? No. Can you tell me anything about your character development or your process around the creation of dialogue?
It's funny. I was just like, this woman up front here is someone I'm mentoring right now, and I'm always on her about writing dialogue. I think that comes from my screenwriting background. So when I started my MFA in creative writing, it was always to be a screenwriter. And you can't write your character's thoughts in screenplay. So everything has to be in dialogue. And so I think that's where my instinct is. In fact, I find it really hard to write out the thoughts of my character, which is something Sophie, it's really good. We're like the opposite. But the best piece of advice that I receive about dialogue, and I don't even know who gave this to me, it was probably in a screenwriting class, was that dialogue is action, and dialogue is plot, really, because yeah, it's the character's actions, and you create character or characters are revealed through their actions, and that's both the things they do and the things that they say. That sounds really nerdy, but that's just how I always approach dialogue. And there always needs to be subtext too. Like the things that aren't said or the things that are said between the lines is what's more important than actually what's on the surface. But
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, that's really kind of great, the screenwriting connection there. I sometimes hesitate to ask the dialogue question, and then I'm always surprised and impressed by the answer when I do ask it. So I should always ask it. Okay, well, I sort of have one final question, and then we can go to the audience Q&A after that. But can you tell me something about the beautiful cover art for the book and what's going on there, where it came from, and who the artist is?
Yes, I just think there's never gonna be a more beautiful cover in the world. So when I first came up with this idea to write about a beadwork artist, I knew that I needed to learn about it. And the first person that I approached was Catherine Boyer. I came across her work, I think at the Slate Gallery at that one show, and I just fell in love with it. And I might have even spoken to her, I might have been too shy, but when I did decide to write the book, she was the first person that I reached out to, and she had just moved to Winnipeg at that time. So I drove out to Winnipeg and met her in her house, and she still had like things not unpacked there. And she gave me my first beading lesson, and I watched her bead because I wanted to learn like the motions, and we spent hours chatting. And then I interviewed many more Métis beadworkers after that, but then cut to years later, I finally finished the book, and Simon and Schuster were determined that there had to be beadwork on the cover. And I initially, when I came up with the idea, I thought there should be too, but there have been so many Indigenous novels and books out that have beautiful beadwork on them, and I wasn't sure how they're going to make it look so unique. And then a few weeks later, they sent me back this JPEG of the cover, and it's Catherine Boyer's work. And they had no idea that Catherine had given me my first beadwork lesson. So it was this full circle kind of magical moment. Yeah, I was just shocked and in awe, and I couldn't be happier.
That's awesome. I want to ask you, you don't have to tell me. Did you cry when you saw your cover? I have cried over my cover for both reasons. The only thing I'm going to say is if there's anything else that, we didn't cover that you really wanted to say or have had a chance to say in like Toronto or Winnipeg and didn't have a chance here yet, I just want to give you that opportunity to say that before I give it back to Ben.
Of course, my mind goes blank. I don't think so. Oh, goodness. No, thank you for your questions, Lisa, and thank you so much for being part of this night and for everyone for coming out.
Yeah. Absolutely. Around and I can swap out microphone noise. All right, if we have any audience questions, please raise your hand. I'm happy to run the microphone to you.
Hi, Tara. Congratulations again. I was just wondering how it was working with a big publisher compared to a smaller local publisher.
I'm still processing that. I'm like, it's a machine. It's a big machine, and you have to finish the novel like a year before it comes out because of all the prep work that they do. Yeah, I feel like this is like at the end of a week of being, yeah, a flurry of activity. So I'm still, yeah, processing it all. But what I loved about Simon and Schuster was how thoughtful and how much care they gave this novel. Like, I mean, it's evident in the cover too, how much just love they have poured into this. But it's a night and day experience, especially looking at my COVID experience where nothing. It's been, yeah, just crazy the number of people involved and the number of things that they do kind of behind the scenes. Yeah. And then, yeah, I had this conversation, I think with Gavin, I think with the publicist, and I said, I kind of feel like Gollum coming out like from under the caves and being shoved in front of this camera and that camera, and after sitting for years by yourself at a desk with no interaction, it's very discombobulating. But yeah.
Anyone else?
I'm so excited for you. And thank you for letting me be part of the journey that you went on. My question is, besides Florence, what other characters in the story were you really excited to develop and make into a person? So what do you have another character that you were really attached to?
Yeah, that would be Clancy. So Clancy is Florence's brother. Gavin's on Team Clancy too. He's her brother, and he is someone who is unable to pass. So he lives a very different life than Florence is able to, or than Florence does. And he challenges Florence in really big but really important and meaningful ways. Yeah, I love him.
Just kind of echoing what Wilfred was saying. Do you want to talk about Aunt Louise as well?
Aunt Lillian,
Aunt
yes.
Lillian, pardon me.
No, that's okay. Aunt Lillian, yes, she is another favorite. She is a give no shits. I am who I am. So she also challenges Florence in really big ways as well. And yeah, the other night I said she is the heart and soul of the book, and I think that's true. Yeah, I love her very much as well.
Do we have any other questions? Oh, wonderful.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi. I love this. I love your mind. But I'd like to know, there's obviously quite a lot of trauma in this narrative. There's the very early event in Florence and Clancy's life. There's also the disputes over land. So catharsis is therefore really, really important. And it comes through in handicraft, it comes through in language, and it comes through in familial reconciliation. So does this catharsis echo anything in your own journey and or that of your family? Was there anything that you kind of called from when writing this?
Who is mentoring who? That's a really good question, but I think my own reconnection journey has been a catharsis, and getting to meet family members, but other people who have gone through the same experience, getting to be involved in the community and learning about the culture. I think that all played a part. Yeah, all very cathartic. Thank you.
Do we have any final questions? Oh, we got one over here.
I don't have a question. I just wanted to make a comment, and that was, I grew up on a road allowance in the 1940s, and I just wanted to say that every single one of those characters were so true. And even with the piece that you read, your introduction, the putting the peroxide on the hair, I remember somebody in our community who did that. And lots of people did that before they would leave to go away and find work or whatever. And there used to be a joke in the 40s about peroxide blondies. Other Métis people could tell who they were by the way that they bleached their hair. So when I read it, it was, I knew everybody. And I think that's true for anybody that grew up on a road allowance. It's true. We knew people who left and were away for so long they couldn't come home again. Or they, run into family, and what do you do when you? All of those were so. And some of them I experienced myself. I never dyed my hair. I never tried that because I saw somebody with a really badly blistered head. It was a chicken. I just wanted to say it was a beautiful novel. When you talk about working with beads, that I couldn't articulate it like that, but I know that the rhythm was there. I'm not a beader either. I could, take lessons forever and I wouldn't be able to bead. But there were beaters. There was always beaters in everybody's house because that's how they made extra money for the home. And I always remember the rhythm. It's not, when I say that, it's just that if you have beaters in the house takes on that kind of a rhythm, and you can feel it. And rhythm is really important in our stories. I just read a new novel that'll be out pretty soon, and the rhythm is traveling by wagon, and I remember what it felt like to travel by wagon because that's it's if somebody gets into that rhythm, it's well, thank you because you've really told our story and our history, and like she said, there's trauma and everything, but you didn't go into all the trauma, but you could feel it. So those things became our own, what each of us have experienced in a different kind of way. Without saying it, you said it. So thank you.
Right. Do we have any final questions or comments? Oh,
You read a very short time. Do you ever read a little bit more to people?
Do I ever do that?
Yeah, could you just read a little bit more?
You want me to bring the podium back?
No, that's
Okay.
fine. Oh my goodness. Okay, maybe I will read. I'll read a section from the past, maybe. Maybe not, because I can't find it. Okay, I'll read this section. So Clancy has just come back into Florence's life, and he has convinced her to meet her. He's her brother. I don't think I'm giving anything away. He's convinced her to meet her on the edges of town to do something that she doesn't quite know what it is they're going to do or where they're going. Her LaSalle sputters through town towards the new development. She's been sputtering all morning too. Tripped over her words at church a few times. She was so nervous. No one at church seemed to notice her state, but she regrets agreeing to Clancy's terms. The springs in the seat bite her bottom, and she shifts a little to the left, away from a particularly pointy spring digging in. Doesn't want a hole in her Carrybrook houndstooth slacks. Her favorite for the office, and chosen for today because they pair nicely with her poppy red blouse. Spiffy and smart, Shirley said of the outfit when she wore it to work. An outfit to impress. Others at church had admired it too. Silly to want to wear it today. Florence rounds the end of Saunders Streets onto Colburn, which is still just a dirt road. Mounds of upturned earth and stacks of lumber here and there. Skeletons of houses on what will be a new block in town. A crescent, actually. The first for Tour de Val. The plan is for other, larger crescents to be built behind this one as the town grows, one street hugging the other. There was some talk about whether the streets should be kept in straight lines. There are no rivers or lakes that require a curved road, but ultimately the town council approved the crescent on the theory that would add value to the town, improve its character. Florence thought it was all silly, but driving along the curving street, imagining the finished homes, green lawns, and some trees, she thinks it will be pretty. There's even a circular boulevard in the center where a flower garden or a bunch of lilac or azalea bushes could be planted and make the block burst with color and scent. She could put her own little house up for sale, maybe, and move into something more modern, easier to maintain. Florence inches along the road. No sign of Clancy. The clouds are a thick wool blanket in the sky and dark at the edges, like the weather could turn. She drives the entire length of the crescent and still no sign of him. She could head home, pull on her flannel housecoat, and spend the rest of the day reading. But the envelope is still in her purse. She starts another loop, feeling a fool. When she's partway around, a croaky horn honks and Florence brakes. Mr. Hoover's truck is parked beside a partially built two-story. The truck's back end hidden by the house skeleton. The horn honk croaks again. Florence climbs out of her car, pulls her coat collar up against the cool air and glances around, but the rest of the street is empty. She totters through piles of gravel and dirt, past stacks of plywood and 2x4s. Clancy rolls down the window. Climb in, he says, and motions for her to walk to the passenger side. As she nears, her foot lands in a pocket of mud and a glob sticks to her loafers, inappropriate for such an excursion, but they complete her outfit. I'd rather follow you in my own vehicle, she says. I'm not ugly, he chuckles, though there's friction there too. I'd prefer it that way. She scrapes the mud off her shoe on a nearby rock, scratching the leather in the process. Fine, get on the highway and head east. I'll wait for you to catch up. He rolls up the window and reverses at the same time. She trudges back to her car, stones and pebbles now sticking to the mud on her shoes. On her final tour of the crescent, she sees Clancy in her rear view, driving straight through the empty field behind the bare-bone houses, the truck bobbing over the broken ground, cutting its own course, then partially disappearing into the overgrown prairie grass.
Oh, sorry, I keep asking for final questions and then we have several more questions afterwards. But as we're winding down time-wise, does anybody else have anything they'd like to say or any other questions? Going once, going twice. Sorry. Is it available on audiobook?
Yes, and Tanis Peronto does the audio narration. I believe she's from Alberta. I can't remember the community she's from, but she sent me a message after she recorded it, and she said she called on her aunties and uncles when she was reading it. So yes.
All right, I think we'll probably wrap it up there then. If you have any other questions or comments that you guys think of, I'm sure that Tara would be happy to answer them over at the signing table. But once again, thank you to Tara for being here. Thank you, Lisa. And thank you all for coming out tonight. Final round of applause, and then feel free to go get your book signed.